Good afternoon, good morning, or good night. Depends upon where you are in this world's fire service. And this is the international presentation. We have brothers and sisters from Australia, the UK, Germany, Israel that tune in either live or when it's archived. My name is Bill Gustin, and this is this month's Wednesday Humpday Hangout. I want to thank our sponsor, Key Hose, that's keyfire.com, for sponsoring this Wednesday's Humpday Hangout. It's an easy endorsement for me. I do believe it is the finest hose made. And I was envious the other day. I'm at our training facility, and I'm wondering, where's all the new hose that I see that the department is telling me that they're buying? And my department buys exclusively Key Combat Ready. I do my share of complaining about things in my department, but one thing, they don't go cheap on hose. They buy the very best, and the very best is Key Combat Ready. So I'm hearing that we've bought several hundred feet of Combat Ready hose. Well, where is it? Well, the recruits are using it. They got the best stuff. So we'll just have to wait until the recruit classes are over. But it's the best. I give it a hearty endorsement because I have my hands on it every shift. I've been in the fire service 44 years. I began in Wheaton, Illinois, in the Chicago area. And for the last 39, I've been on the Miami-Dade Fire Department in Southeast Florida. So having made that introduction for myself, if we could talk to the good Captain Mike, could you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Talk a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the FDNY. And like Bill, I started in the fire service a long, long time ago, 40-something years ago, in a volunteer department. Went on the New York City Fire Department over 30 years ago and have been retired a couple of years. And I'm just happy to be here and being the fire service as the way it is. It's dynamic. Things are changing. We are going to be talking today a little bit about hoarding fires, but first I think we might talk a little bit about the high-rise fire that we had in London. And there was also another one in Germany that killed 2 other people. And if you look at the pictures of the German one, it also appears that the fire traveled up the exterior of the building.
Yes, and we are going to look at that. I mean, the information is sketchy now, but it's I think we're seeing history repeat itself. And we're going to have some people that are going to weigh in that we've contacted. We do our homework for this, and Mike and I have consulted with some subject experts, Jack Murphy, Jerry Tracy, and Glenn Corbett, and who is one of the technical editors for fire engineering. And I was also chair of the fire protection engineering curriculum at John Jay College in New York City. Jerry Tracy is a world-renowned expert on high-rise firefighting and cut his teeth in fighting high-rise fires in Manhattan. Jack has a really interesting background in that he worked for Citibank worldwide as one of their fire safety directors. So he is familiar with codes and constructions in high-rise buildings throughout the world. Although they could not make it on short notice, we have asked them to consult with us, and we will review some of the things that they told us that they think happened at this horrific fire in London. Our next participant is our buddy Sam. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, it's Samuel Hiddle. I'm a lieutenant with Wichita Fire Department. And like everybody else, you know, I enjoy sitting down with this group of guys and going back and forth. I'm always taking notes. I'm always learning things, and it's beneficial for everyone, I think.
It is. We all learn from each other. We all make each other better. We all bring each other up. And that's just not within this group. It's everybody throughout the World Fire Service training community. Mr. Liggins, we've got some special guests. If you'd introduce yourself and then have the guests introduce themselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Daryl Liggins. I'm a captain with the Oakland Fire Department. This is my 24th year in the fire service. Still having a good time, still trying to learn. I am surrounded by some of our newest members, and I have One member here, his name is
I'm Daniel Ceballos, probationary firefighter.
yeah, he is new to Oakland, but he has 4 years experience with the Vallejo, California Fire Department.
I'm probationary firefighter, paramedic Brandon Mandap. I'm in my 9th month of probation. I came from also a different department near Vallejo called Benicia Fire Department.
My name is Hiro Oshiro. I'm a probationary firefighter for the city of Oakland. This is my 9th month. I'm happy to be here.
Yep, they all say that this much time.
Fellas, we were speaking off air, and I do mean this with all sincerity. You hear these old timers say, well, the people we're hiring today, the people that are coming on the fire department, they're just not the same caliber. You guys got to run?
No, I don't, but someone's backing in with a spare rig.
Okay. Well, let me just continue with this thought. Is that, by the way, nice to see you backing the apparatus. I don't give a damn how many fancy cameras you have. It's no substitute for having backers. Okay. That was great. What I was going to say is it's easy for old timers to say, the people we're hiring today, they're not as good as it was in the old days when I came on. That's BS. I know on my department today, those recruits are coming out of that academy way better trained than I was at that stage in my career. And the reason being is that when I came on the department, the new lieutenants that were on the bottom of the list were forced to go in to recruit training. They were forced to do it. They didn't want to be there. Hence, our quality of training was not that good. Today, we have one of the finest training academies in the country. I am proud to say. Why? Because of the outstanding people on Miami-Dade's training division that are cranking out some fine young men and women. And right now we are in a big hiring boom, and it is nonstop recruit class. And I'm very proud of our training division. So the other thing, Daryl, do they teach the crew resource management philosophy that even though you're a new person on the job, your eyes, your ears, they mean something? You know, you're another set of eyes, another set of ears. If you see something, say something. Don't be intimidated by your lack of seniority.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can't be assumed that just because someone's been in the department for a long time that they saw a power line hanging that I didn't see or something. So I've always tell my members, if you see something, speak up. You know, let me know. So
yeah. And there's been documented cases where recruits and probationary personnel didn't feel it was their place to say anything, and something like a down power line was missed. So, you know, when you see something, say something. So, fellas, you're not entirely new to the fire service, but you're new to Oakland. You're on a great fire department, and it's great to have you on board. Mike, do you want to give us a little summation of the situation that occurred in London early this morning?
Yeah, I do, Bill. We'll talk about that. I just want to say to these young men that are the probies, enjoy it. It goes way fast. And what they said about me when I was a new fireman was, I wasn't in Vietnam, I wasn't in Korea. How could I know anything? Okay, I didn't have the military background that they all had. And people have said that about us, and they have said it about the people who came before us. But they said it about the guys coming out of World War II. Said, you guys don't know what you're talking about. We were in the Great War. Listen, these young kids know. And the one thing I will tell each and every one of your guys there is, wear your gear. Protect yourself because of the risks of cancers. You are a lot more informed than we were. And use that information to protect yourself. So we had this fire in London. Started on the 2nd floor, and it traveled up. You've all probably seen the buildings. If you're a student of the game, you've definitely seen the buildings. You've probably gotten a couple of phone calls, okay? It traveled up the exterior of the building. It was a building built in the 70s, I think, and it was just rehabbed recently, but that building is not required to have sprinklers. It was a fire that got to the outside and started the exterior cladding, the sheathing that is on the exterior for weather. Now, the problem that we have, and this is similar to the fire that was recently over on New Year's Eve in Dubai, we have the exterior sheathing. It's not fireproofed. And the exterior sheathing has to stay off the exterior wall of the building to leave a little airflow in there. If not, it traps moisture and allows mold to grow in there. And they don't want that. So they need an airflow. So it's like taking a piece of paper and holding it on a vertical line and having fire somewhere down below. It's going to catch it on fire. Well, it caught it in any open window or where it's attached to the windows, where there's any failure, it's going to get inside that building. The one in Dubai had sprinklers inside the apartments, so it didn't do too much interior damage. The problem is we have to get rapid water above the fire on the exterior of the building. And that appeared to have taken them some time. And I don't know all of the situations there, okay? This is an older building, so it's a brick and mortar building. It is not one of the newer type of buildings that they're building that are the wood high rises. Thank goodness, because then the building would have come down most likely, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think that would have happened. But this was a brick and mortar building built in the 70s, so it was concrete and block and all that. But because of this exterior siding that allows the fire to travel and gets both sides, it creates almost like an oxygen inflow through the back where it goes all the way up to allow that airflow. It's feeding it. It's also creating its own flow paths. As we all know from anything we study now, it's got a flow path moving that fire and those things up. As the heat rises, it's going to bring everything up.
Now, Mike, as I said, I consulted with some subject experts. Jack Murphy, who is very familiar with international codes in construction. And I made the comment that, well, I'm surprised to see a fire of that magnitude occur in the UK. I'm more accustomed to seeing something like that occur in the Mideast, like you say, Dubai. And he says, oh, wait, where do you think the construction and standards come from a lot of buildings in the Mideast? It is UK codes, it's UK standards. Jack wanted me to express to all of you that remember standards are standards, and it's usually just the bare minimum. The other thing that Glenn Corbett, who is the fire protection engineering professor, the exterior cladding is called exterior metal composite panels. It is a polystyrene foam or some other type of highly combustible foam that burns like solidified gasoline and melts and starts a dripping, spilling three-dimensional fire sandwiched in between two very thin layers of sheet metal. Another point that Glenn brought up is that we usually try to apply a protect in place strategy for residential high rises with the idea that you'll have compartmentation. Well, that's fine when the fire is confined to an apartment or even if it gets in the public hallway. It's not fine when it's exposing every apartment in the building from the exterior. And another factor that Glenn wanted me to impress upon our viewers is if you've got a building that does not have a PA or fire command system where the fire officers can direct the occupants to a specific stairway, protect in place, whatever it is, how do you direct these people to either evacuate and by what means, by what stairway? And this, Glenn thinks that will also be a factor. Jerry Tracy, retired from FDNY, just a few minutes ago contacted me and says that the Swedes have a system. It's called the Flame Ranger. It's designed to be retrofitted into high-rise buildings that has flame detectors that will triangulate the location of a fire and deliver an exterior stream down the side of the building. I know no more about that, but Bill, Carrie, if you're watching, I think that would be something that would be really great if we could take a look at on the fire engineering webpage. I think it certainly is relevant now. So having said that, Sam, any thoughts, any opinions, any gut feelings on what happened in London?
You know, I'm certainly not the most senior member here, but I've learned to take things slow. It's one of those things we don't have to make decisions today, and so I'm with you guys. I'm going to wait a couple days and let the information kind of settle out before we run with it, because unfortunately, too often the first information we get is typically the only information we get. I would say, and this kind of goes along with what Captain Dugan was saying, we need to be mindful of our floors. You know, we're going up the stairwell and we're checking doors, and we may not see fire or smoke on a floor until 2 or 3 floors above where the actual source is coming, which means if we can't get a line to that base, then we're just going to keep feeding it.
You know, I think it's Washington, D.C. that has a regulation or a procedure that no matter where the fire is in the building, one of the first arriving companies checks the basement. And you think, well, let the fire is reported on the 22nd floor. Why would you be checking the basement? Is it conceivable that you could have a fire in the basement and a fire on the 22nd floor? And the answer is absolutely. It's entirely conceivable. When you get a fire in an electrical panel that spreads up a bus duct, absolutely you could. In fact, Jack Murphy is wondering, just thinking out loud, that perhaps some of the fire spread in this building in London could have been due to in utility penetrations from floor to floor as well. Daryl, any thoughts? Anything before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, I mean, one is this could have easily been a Monte Carlo fire in Vegas. The only reason I think that didn't happen there is because of the sprinkler systems in the building. We had that exterior foam burning and rapidly spreading around the outside of the building, but the sprinklers controlling room to room. So it's not that far-fetched for that to happen in the US, the way that we're using foam on the exterior of buildings to have cheap construction. I know it's used in strip malls quite a bit, and now we see what can happen in a high-rise. I was watching this last night on a live YouTube feed, and I saw a lot of comments were, in our climate, people thinking that this was some type of terrorist act. And I think what we see, because it, you know, initial reports looked like it was a fire that started like on a lower floor and rapidly spread, is how fast fire can spread and how devastating it could be, and really motivates me and hopefully other firefighters to really pay attention to our building construction, our fire prevention, our inspections, because I don't think any of this really had anything to do with their tactics. I think there's dominoes that were in place that caused that type of catastrophe well before the alarm came in, whatever building construction features were going on. And the other thing, as far as fire attack, it's kind of the worst case scenario. That's a very difficult type of fire to apply water on. Our systems are primarily meant to go from inside out, and to apply water on the exterior of a building in such large volume, 27 stories up, is extremely difficult, if not next to impossible.
Can I throw one other thing in there?
Yes, go ahead.
I would just like to throw in also staffing. It amazes me how many places you go and you've got maybe 2 engines in a single truck and a population of 30 or 40,000 with industrial and wood apartments and wood hotels. Staffing is huge. And that's something that the city administrators have to look at. It's not something we go to every day, but it's an insurance. It's a what if. It amazes me how many administrators say, well, we don't really need to worry about that. It hasn't happened here. And you ask them, do you lock your door at night? Yes. Have you ever been robbed? No. It's the same thing.
And if I could say this for our new brothers there, our young brothers in Oakland, you're going to hear this all the time, fellas. Fires are down. We're mostly EMS. We just don't see fires like we used to. Oakland, California? I don't think so. I think you're seeing plenty of fire. Unfortunately, and you're going to fires you wish you hadn't gone to. The fact of the matter is fires are down, but the seriousness, the amount of deaths, the property loss, compared to in the past is huge. Fires are down, but the magnitude of the fire is way up. And one of the best examples of that is our toothpick towers, our wood frame apartment complexes, 4 stories of wood frame, sometimes on top of 2 stories of type 1 or type 3 construction. So don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah,
Couple of things.
my firefighter here over my shoulder, Hero, he went to, how large was that building in Emeryville? There's a massive fire in a building under construction that sent embers just blowing throughout the city, you know, over 6 alarms. So some of them are getting a taste of that already.
A couple of things on this, Bill, if you wouldn't mind. I'd just like to jump on a couple of things. First off, in a fire like this where it involves exterior sheathing, the only way to really fight the fire correctly is get water above it and bring it down on it. So first off, in a building like that, are you going to be able to get your people up to the roof or above this fire to get water flowing through that building to push it down? And I'm not sure whether any of us, even someone as large as the city of New York, is equipped to do that. So maybe we do need to do something, almost like a dry stamp pipe, a dry sprinkler system outside on these buildings if there is combustible sheathing, where a sprinkler head is located along the roof line, where we can put water. The fire department can hook right in there and pump it, and almost put a water shower, a curtain, whatever you want to call it, down the exterior of the building. That's one.
I want to give a shout out to Pete McBride from Ottawa, Canada, because he had a discussion with Jerry Tracy. He says, I don't know why you guys put that blanket on the outside of the building for wind-driven fires. I would take a Bresnan distributor, lower it down from a floor above, and allow the wind or just the force of the distributor. Well, we tried it. It is impressive. Now, to what extent would it work on a large-scale incident like that? But I actually have the video. I could have Bill post it, and it is impressive. And I thought it would be difficult to handle or would go out of control, but the force of the water rotating balanced itself out, Mike, and it worked like a champ. And you lowered it down from the upper window or the roof, and it does work. So, you know, maybe that's an idea. And it wasn't my idea. I stole it from Pete McBride in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you very much, Pete. There'll be an article next week on fire engineering on it.
We have the floor below nozzle.
Yeah.
We go, and I've been to fires where the wind has driven the fire in, and we have used the adjoining apartment to breach a wall and let the wind carry the water in to put the fire out. But in this fire here, the other thing is I just got a text. The number of dead is reported up to 12. So I do want to say something that our prayers are with the firefighters there and the families of the people who lived in that building. It is sad. And we had a question on Twitter about what if this had been a wood framed type structure. This had been one of those wood frame, the toothpick towers, timber towers, whatever you want to call them. If it had been a wood frame building, and I don't know if there are any up over 20 stories yet, but they're encroaching on that area. If this had been a wood framed building and the fire of that magnitude got inside on every floor, I think, as I had said earlier, the fire would have been, the building would have come down.
And that building may come down. We don't know to what extent the fire got inside and affected the structural stability. Is it a steel frame? Did it have fireproofing? 1974. Was it your typical Q decking? These are all things that we're going to find out, down the road. It's just about halfway point, and I'm going to switch gears here a little bit if I could. I want to give a shout out to Key Hose. And as I said, it's an easy endorsement for me because I use Key almost every shift, and it is the best balance of kink resistance, heat resistance, flow capability. They're top of the line, Key combat ready. I swear by it. Now, you would have to be living under a rock not to have seen, if you're a student of the fire service, an article in April's 2017 Fire Engineering, Thermal Failure of Hose Line and Analysis of the Data. Now, I thought long and hard about this. Key did very well in these tests that were run by the alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. They did. In fact, they're combat ready in the full fire scale tests. Beat every other brand in type. There were two types of tests. There was the full scale tests where they ran the hose up the stairs and down the hallways in an acquired structure, and then there were some bench tests. That's not my point. That's not my point. My point is this. Unless you want to go back to washing bulky, naturally occurring cotton jacket hose and hanging it in a hose tower, you better get used to and take precautions for your hose to burn or melt through even when it is flowing water. It is going to happen. It will happen. It will continue to happen. And I don't see the hose industry or our industry ever having a practical solution for fireproof hose. So what are we going to do about it? Is it a hose problem or is it a fire ground discipline problem? I think it's a fire ground discipline problem. The deeper you go into a building, the more chances that a hot plaster ceiling is going to fall down on your hose, or that you are going through, say, a mobile home, a scrap yard, or something where you have hot metal surfaces. An aerosol can blows up. A flammable liquid is ignited in the fire, and you have a rapid intensification. The deeper you go into the building, the more you need a backup line. How does the hose burn through? You're stretching it along the side of the building. The fascia burns off the building, lands on that polyester and nylon jacketed hose. And again, I don't care if it's Key or brand X, it's going to burn through. So these tests are beneficial. I think it's a good place to start. But regardless of the brand, the make of hose, my point is, fire ground discipline, be aware of the fact that the hose can and will burn through if you get in that position. And if you do you have a backup line to protect you and your means of escape? So that's me on my soapbox for a few minutes. Mike, would you want to opine on this heat resistance of hose? Burn through.
Yeah, I think the heat resistance of the hose is something we are never going to get to where it is fireproof. Just ain't going to happen. They could get us pipes. We could be carrying lengths of pipe like the old Bangalore torpedoes and using that, but I don't think that would be an effective firefight. So there's going to be a problem. I think it's a fire ground discipline problem. I agree. I think that everyone on fire ground has to be watching the hose. As you're walking in, you're looking around everything. But if you see the hose resting on a red hot door frame, if you see the hose resting on an ember, move it out of the way. Bend down and pick it up. I'm a truckie, and I guarantee you the hose is not covered with dog shit. Okay? It's not electrified. It's not going to hurt us truckies. Bend down and pick it up. If you hear the nozzle man calling for more line, pick up a little hose and hump a little hose in towards the guy, okay, or girl, it doesn't matter. But we all have to be part of seeing, because if we don't put the fire, if the engine company doesn't put the fire out, the truckies are just more fire victims. And I will readily admit that. So we need to make sure that hose is protected. We need that backup line. We need it in place. And we need everyone being aware of the hose and how it's moving and where it's moving. Is it pinched? Is it caught? Or anything else? That is everybody's job on the fire ground. And that is a lack of telling your people that they have to do this.
Yeah, and it's a lot has to do with situational awareness. Let me tell you a mistake my company made. We had some high-rise hose. It was made exclusively for high-rise operations. The only benefit of it, it was lighter to carry up the stairs. That was the only benefit of this hose. Somehow, imagine Murphy's Law being in effect, that hose found its way into our static 2.5-inch hose bed. We roll up on a wood frame, fully involved, fire rolling underneath the front porches. We set up a 2.5-inch line with that section of hose. Just the tiniest little bit of grass burning in the front yard melted a hole in that hose. So be careful, and that's why sometimes when you have a very, very lightweight, maneuverable hose, you got to ask yourself, it begs the question, are you substituting mass for a lack of abrasion and heat resistance? Sam, have you ever experienced a burn or melt through on hose?
Yeah, you actually beat me to it, Captain. We tend to diminish the value of situational awareness when we're on the umbilical cord, if you will. We're obviously a light staff department. A couple years ago, went into a commercial, and the insulation up above in the metal decking fell down. And we have a guy, he's got to bounce between friction points. Well, when he came back to it, a piece of that plastic that's on that insulation up in the roof fell down and burned through. And we ended up having a mayday. And now you have an engine company that's cut off from each other.
And it's we could have our whole session on whys and trunk lines and all that, and that's a pretty strong argument for the guys that are advocates of severely reducing the amount of whys that we use in these trunk lines. Is that are we putting all of our eggs in one basket with a trunk line that's supplying two lines? Especially if that trunk line is inside the building and is exposed to heat or abrasion. Daryl, how about yourself? Have you experienced a melt through, a burn through, and what does your department do to prevent it?
Well, I can't say myself that I've experienced a line burning through. I was trying to think of that when you were talking. The main thing I would say we do to prevent it is, and I had this discussion with one of my firefighters this morning at the kitchen table when the topic of penciling came up, and I told him we are not penciling. As Aaron Field says, we're erasing fire, and we are going to flow copious amounts of water and be like a bulldozer moving through this area. That way our bodies and our equipment are moving through a cooled down area and severely reducing the chances of the hose coming in contact with hot terrazzo tile or steel or stair rail banisters or granite or whatever else may be melting. Well, essentially what is plastic fire hose. Our department isn't in common practice of using gated Ys, so normally our second line is a separate line off of the rig with its own gauge and own discharge. So that's one thing I think I'm not a fan of gated Ys, and I've mentioned that on these Hangouts before. But if you do that operation, just be aware that if you lose a section of that trunk line, you can be losing both lines at the same time. Currently, one thing I am very happy with fire service trend-wise, and we're testing it on my company right now, is we have a key True ID hose that we're field testing, and it is a more robust hose, a thicker rubber liner, a more substantial inner and outer jacket. And although it may not sell people as well when they feel that it maybe not folding as well, or it seems a little heavy or dry, the performance when charged and operating is so much better. So I'm glad that we do have to have some more mass for thermal protection. There's no other answer for that other than having different materials, like you said, cotton.
Did the fellows behind you, Daryl, have any of them experienced a melt or burn through?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. You know, fellas, you will, but I think you're going to be better trained than perhaps we were at the stage in your career to recognize those conditions that can cause that melt through or burn through, like the hot metal surfaces, what Mike was talking about, Captain Mike. Recognizing the hot metal surfaces, and similarly recognizing sharp surfaces that can tear a hole in your hose. One of the notorious ones is the top of a chain link fence. When you're going over the top and you snag your hose, you're going to rip it. You're going to rip a hole in the outer jacket for sure.
And Bill, on your
Yes, sir.
point of trunk lines, if you're bringing the trunk line in along the building line, depending on where you are, and you have people on the floors above the fire or on the fire floor taking glass. Okay, I have seen the trunk lines fail through a shard of glass coming down and just hitting into that trunk line. And now both your lines who are stretched at the front lobby of the building are out of service.
I hear you, brother. I hear you. Now, I'm not completely on board with the anti-Y parade, but I got to tell you, they got a solid argument and a valid argument, and I respect their opinion. And you guys know who I'm talking about. And we've got some big names in the fire service that would like to severely limit the use or eliminate the use of the Y. On a similar topic, my department is a large diameter LDH forward lay from hydrant to fire department. In one basket, because at most fires, one supply line will provide all the flow necessary. As my dad used to ask me when I told him how we operated, remember he was a lieutenant on the Chicago Fire Department, 33-year veteran. He'd say, "Hey, wait a minute, Bill, you have one supply line. What good is a backup line if it is coming off the same engine as the first line and that engine breaks down?" Is he right? Yeah, he's right. Now, Mike, in the FDNY, is it required or is it standard procedure or just habit that the second line comes off of another engine connected to a separate hydrant?
The first two lines come off of the first engine, and only two lines come off the first engine. After that, the third line going to the floor above or wherever else comes off another engine. Now, we have had problems where they have lost the pumper and they have to get the lines to another engine. But our procedures are that every engine takes a hydrant, gets a positive water source, and is ready to back up if something else happens. If you see pictures, a lot of pictures of the FDNY, you see a lot of ladder trucks. You don't see that many engines because they're all bunked in on the hydrants, and every one of them is on a water source. I don't care if you're the fourth in engine. You find a water source, you check the hydrant, you make sure it's working, and you're ready to go as soon as you're needed.
We have a procedure on our job, and it's a drill, and we've actually done it at fires. That your engine breaks down. It's got one or two lines in a building. Now, what are we going to do? It just broke down. What we do is we'll have another engine somewhere that we have. Most of our rigs have 750-gallon booster tanks. We will run a line to an intake of the disabled apparatus and pump into that, basically turning it into a manifold and giving at least 750 gallons of water for those guys to get out. And then we'll worry about switching out the water supply. We use a portable manifold. It's like a big water thief at the end of our 5-inch line when we lay it, which enables us to not have to run hundreds of feet back down to the hydrant to shut the hydrant off in order to switch from the disabled engine to the intake of an engine that still operates. But we found that was safer and better than just pulling additional lines. Your limiting factor is your intake relief valves, though, fellas. If they're set too low, you're not going to be able to effectively turn your disabled apparatus into a manifold. Any thoughts on that, fellas?
There's a San Francisco's right over the bridge from us, and they seem to have a good operation. And Dugan can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems very similar to New York, where They lay out, and I know New York's using a single 3.5. San Francisco's laying dual 3-inch lines from the pumper to the hydrant. And then another pumper is laying dual 3s from the pumper at the hydrant to another hydrant. And it seems like a great redundant system. If they lose a hose due to some kind of mechanical damage, they have another line already there. And if they lose a pumper, they already have another pumper in line. So it would be a seamless transition to another pumper. And if a hydrant even were bad, they're actually on a second hydrant. And I think that they have a great water system in that city and a really good, solid operation to get a water supply and also a redundant water supply.
I'll tell you another thing San Francisco has, and I've been networking with Chief Dave Franklin. I believe he's their chief of operations. They have a remarkable high-rise fire prevention program. They're one of the few large jurisdictions that test fire suppression systems in full accordance with NFPA 25. From what I understand, I'm not intimately familiar, but that's the understanding that I have, is that they're one of the few. I know my jurisdiction's not doing it, and I mean, how many jurisdictions throughout this country are actually requiring every 5 years for pressure reducing standpipe outlet valves to be fully flowed in a flow test? I don't see it happening very often. I think we're sitting on a ticking time bomb there, Mr. Hiddle. What do you think? What about Wichita, Kansas? Are you going to get yourself in trouble?
Yeah, I was going to say no comment. I can tell you this: we had a high-rise fire not too long ago, and one of the guys who may or may not should have been part of that came up and said, "Did you know this riser was out?" And I said, "Yes, we all knew the riser was out. We did a department-wide drill in it 7 years ago and couldn't use it." So
riser was still out. You know what, Sam, we can air our dirty laundry in public, because every one of us, if Mike Dugan or Daryl Liggins was to get up and said that the Oakland Fire Department or the FDNY is without sin, that they are absolutely perfect, you know that they would be full of Bravo Sierra in the phonetic alphabet, okay? We all have our imperfections. The point is, do we recognize them? You know, fellas, there was a tragic fire that occurred several years ago. In this department, there's a fine line, fellas, between extreme pride and esprit de corps in your department and arrogance. And when you think you are the best and you cannot be improved upon, that's dangerous, because that's when you put the blinders on and the earmuffs on and you stop being receptive. And Mike, I have to give a shout out to your department, because as big as you are, you do listen to innovations that take place out of the rural and suburban fire service. So you're never too big or too great or too busy to learn from your brothers and sisters on departments that may be way smaller than you. There's a lot of talent out there everywhere. Daryl, any thoughts there, my brother?
No, I couldn't say it better than myself. I think that no matter how experienced you are, there's always something to learn. And it seems like the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know and how much more there is to learn. You know, you can't know everything about even one specific topic in this. It's a serious job that we're in. So just continue to learn.
You know, and fellas, the fellas behind you, you're professionals, which means that this is not just a job you're on. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. It's a career. It doesn't stop when you guys get off duty. I don't know, in the morning. You guys get off in the morning. It doesn't stop then. You've got time off to rest, be with your family, and keep yourself in shape, and to study. And it's humbling when you start to delve into all of the different things that a firefighter needs to know nowadays. it's humbling to find out how ignorant we really are and how much we have to learn. And that includes me, 62-year-old future nursing home resident right here. You know, before I go off in the sunset on my walker, I still have a lot to learn. Specifically, or most notably, fire suppression systems. Over about the last 10 or 15 years, what I've learned is you can't learn it from the fire service. You have to reach out to professionals in fire prevention and fire suppression system contractors. My department, Miami-Dade, is blessed to have developed a rapport with a company called Sprinklermatic. Next week, we are going to have a training conference. This company has brought in a diesel-powered fire pump with a controller, jockey pump, the works, and plumbed it into our training tower, essentially brought a fire pump in. But the beauty of it is that it's so visible, it's so accessible. And we're going to have a number of classes where we're going to do everything from beginning with the pump, pumping the fire department connection. And this, we're going to delve into this issue of, are you pumping up against a closed clapper, or are you actually feeding the system? We will do both scenarios. And what we'll do is, while we're relying on that fire pump, we'll shut it off. And then what happens? Well, hopefully you have an engine connected up, ready to go. And whether that engine is pumping at demand pressure, which would be basically the churn pressure of the fire pump, is a topic for another day, because there's a couple schools of thought there. I know we're all over the page today, but it's spontaneity. You got a building, it's got a demand pressure of 230 PSI. Do you roll up while the companies are ascending into the building? Does your engineer connect up to the FDC and pump that building at 230 PSI? Would they do that in Oakland?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have a lot to learn as far as manually being able to try and turn on or off a fire pump, or seeing if it's operating properly, and learning the locations of those fire pumps. I would love to be part of your class. That just sounds terrific. I have never seen a class like that.
Well, I have some really smart people that I've stolen a lot of information from, but we got a long way to go. You know, we say, well, the building's fire pump. Well, hey, we got a lot of buildings that have several fire pumps, and they're not all at ground level. And you know, and then you've got tanks where you actually have fire pumps at or near the roof that are pumping water down because the head pressure is not great enough for a hose line on the upper floors because they're too close vertically to the tanks. So, you know what I think we're going to do? We're just going to go along with this line of talking about things I like to talk about, and let's touch on the hoarding next week, or next month, I should say. But fellas, welcome to the fire service, and welcome to a life of studying. Let me say one other thing. I hear teachers say this all the time, and my heart goes out to school teachers because they are terribly underpaid and terribly underappreciated. But when I hear them tell a firefighter, well, I've got a master's degree and you only have a high school diploma and you make more than I do. When you consider an officer on the fire department, a lieutenant, a chief, a captain, how much of his or her life was dedicated to studying, a regimen of studying for promotional exams, and then consider all the other disciplines such as technical rescue, hazardous materials, paramedicine, vehicle extrication, it's high-rise buildings and systems, I mean, alarm systems. When you start to think about the vast amount of knowledge that it takes to be a true professional firefighter and fire officer, man, you've earned your master's degree, bro, and you're earning it every day. So fellas, I know you're going to be lifelong students of the fire service, because, you know, Daryl, he's not going to last forever. Daryl, what are you now? You're 64? You're ready to hang it up. All right, and you guys are gonna have to take his place. You get your own rocking chair.
If we
Mike,
can,
any thoughts?
Go ahead, Daryl.
yeah, I was going to regress a little bit about you talking about the pressure pumping to a system there.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
When I came in the fire service, it was always taught pump 150 and then add 5 pounds for every floor
Yep.
above. Now, when you have a building with preset or even field adjustable PRVs, is that still true?
Hell no.
Now, you
Daryl?
have to pump to the top floor regardless of where the fire is, right?
Brother, the fire pump only knows one pressure, and that's the pressure necessary to deliver 500 gallons a minute in the primary standpipe, plus 250 in additional standpipes, unless I think it's an office over 80,000 square feet, to the roof. That's the only pressure it knows. Hence, the pressure of reducing valves, hopefully, pray that are going to be adjusted accordingly, accurately. So, Daryl, we did this in a building under construction. We pumped to the fire department connection. It's the sign set on the FDC, demand pressure, 220 PSI. We pumped the 150. We couldn't hardly get any water from a first floor outlet because we were not meeting that demand pressure that the system was predicated on. So, yeah, those days are over, my brother. Clark's not with us this month from Clark County, Nevada, but I think it's really impressive what their department has done, either through looking at previous inspection for their fire pumps or their standpipe systems, their flow tests, or I don't know how they obtain the information. Maybe they did the test themselves. But every hotel and casino on the Las Vegas Strip has a demand pressure that they have to meet, and they put it on a laminated piece of paper, and it's right on the pump panel door, or right on the driver's door of the apparatus. Man, you know, that's pre-fire planning. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is with this bill is you got to make sure that everything is done correctly. You know, we had a couple of problems in buildings, and Chief Dunn talked about this a while back, where we had the PRVs, and they were set by floor, and they gave them to the local plumber, and he says, what's this, 1, 2, 3, who cares? And he just started, so the one for the first floor was on the 15th floor. The one for the 15th floor was on the first floor. You opened up a line on the first floor, you were going on a sleigh ride on that hose. You were going all over the place because they weren't set properly. So we have to make sure, I mean, we should be doing what Las Vegas is doing and flow testing every floor to make sure that they're meeting the pressure thing. And that should be like a licensed master fire suppression piping contractor, a licensed plumber doing that. But they have to make sure that this system is set right, those valves are set right. Otherwise, we might think that we have water and we're not flowing the water, and we're going to get ourselves jammed up down that hallway.
Absolutely. And I've said this in previous sessions. I think there's a huge disconnect between fire prevention personnel on your fire department and fire suppression personnel. And I remember my dad, when he made lieutenant on the Chicago Fire Department, he went right in the bureau. He said it made him a much better fire officer because as a professional fire officer, professional firefighter, you have to be familiar with codes, building systems. You have to be. It may be some dry information. I personally enjoy the heck out of it and find it very intriguing and fascinating, but that's me. I don't know what normal people find fascinating, but that's me. But fellas, there's so much out there to learn. Find yourself somebody that's a contractor that has a passion for designing and building systems, suppression systems, and hook up with that guy. They usually will respect what you do, and I have a huge respect for what they do because everything they do is heavy duty, dealing with flanges and pipes and Victolic groove couplings that are like this big. Everything they do is a knuckle buster. So I've got the greatest respect for them. Any thoughts there, Sam?
No, I can't add anything to that.
Yeah, it's fellas, we gotta get out. We've got to get out, and we've got to look at these buildings, and we've got to look at these buildings while they're under construction for two reasons. That's when we're going to see the naked building. The other thing is, when a building is under construction, it is very, very vulnerable. Do you know in your jurisdiction? I know in my jurisdiction, no matter how big the footprint of the building is, you only need one functioning temporary standpipe while the building is under construction. So, you know, that's another reason why maybe that 1 3/4 hose might not be a good idea all the time, especially when the building is under construction, because it could be one heck of a stretch.
You know, you're talking about the disconnect between fire prevention and suppression, and I
Yes.
think our organization's different than most or many, especially large departments. It's harder to have that connection. I rode with our fire prevention when I first got promoted to lieutenant many years ago, and we were going to look at a high-rise under construction, and I just asked, do you know what we use in the building for fire suppression? And they did not know. I mean, I may be airing dirty laundry, but I didn't expect them to know, but it seems like we should know we should be familiar with the codes in suppression. They should be familiar what suppression's using. And then when we get into the building, I asked the fire protection engineer who was installing standpipes if he knew what we hooked up and what we were flowing and what hose we were using, and did not know, just purely going by codes and numbers. And there is definitely a disconnect there. And at that time, our department was switching from 1.5 inch hose to 2.5 inch hose for our standpipe high-rise operations. Next,
I'm going to raise a question in the last few minutes we've got. Over the Memorial Day weekend, we had a gathering of young people at a warehouse, and severely overloaded, no permits. They use social media like Instagram to advertise these events. They had a pool, they had bars, they had stage, they had lighting, they had everything but the proper occupant load, fire extinguishers, egress, means of egress. My chief got wind of it, and it took quite a few phone calls working with the police, and did the very unpopular thing of shutting it down. Have you, Daryl, I'm going to leave you out of this because God knows I know you had this. You ought to, Sam, have you experienced this where at the spur of the moment, a warehouse or a store or something becomes a venue for some type of large event, which is totally illegal and terribly overoccupied?
Are you going to give me a job after you're done asking me these questions?
Yeah, you know what I want, Sam? I'm going to get you on my company, and I'm going to take you to one of these warehouses where there's like 500 people. I'm going to drop you off. I'm going to, hey, Sam, go in there and break up that party. Tell them they're closed for the night. I got your back, brother. Hey, seriously, everybody that's watching, watch out for these events. They could be happening and you don't know it. If you see it, go ahead, Mike.
We have had them. They used to call them raids, and now they've called them pop-up parties and everything else. They happen all over the city of New York, in vacant buildings, in warehouse space that they pay it's an unrented warehouse space. They pay the owner of the property $10,000 for a night to throw a party, and they invite 8,000, 9,000 people, charging them $20 a head to get through the door. And the place is packed. There's no fire exits. There's no plan. There's no evacuation plan. There's no safety personnel. We don't even know what the building was used for before. What's up in the ceiling space? Are they using pyrotechnics? We have no idea. And I mean, we could look at this the things that have happened like this. You could go back to the Station nightclub in Warwick, Rhode Island. You know, you don't know what was put on to deaden the sound, what was in there, what's going on, and this happens throughout the country.
Throughout the country. You're on a medical run at some type of assembly occupancy, whether it's legal or not, and you see it's terribly overloaded. It's not just fire prevention's job. It's your job as a fire officer. You have a duty to act. You have a duty to respond and report it and take action immediately.
You can't leave. In New York, you can't leave the scene. If you
Okay.
find something dangerously overcrowded, PD, if you get there on a run, you get the PD, you get the battalion, you get the division, and you get the borough, and they're going to vacate. I mean, you cannot leave this, because if something happens, you are going to be looking for a job like Sam.
I hear you, Sam. Yeah. Daryl, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for having your fellas on. They're all ruggedly handsome too. You know, you guys consider being like catalog models for something like LL Bean or something like that. I could see you guys modeling like an Oxford cloth shirt with a yellow scarf tied around your neck. I think you guys would be perfect for that.
Well, one of their classmates is an underwear model and has a huge sign on the Las Vegas Strip for Calvin Klein or something. So, but I think they look good because they're just sitting next to me.
No, I think they look good.
And I make them look good.
Yeah. Well, fellas, the best of luck to you. Daryl, thank you so much for having them on, man.
Yeah.
And just so they know, Gustin and I, we're modeling the pens lately.
Yeah.
It was a fun conversation.
Another shout out. Our bald-headed brother, Dan Shaw, has been promoted to, I believe it is, I could be wrong on this, Assistant Chief for Operations. He's with the Fairfax County Fire Department. So for our follically challenged Dan Shaw, I think it's because he's so smart that nothing can grow on his head. He's very qualified, very deserving, and God bless you, and the best of luck. You certainly deserve it, Dan. Any last thoughts, Sam?
No. I guess I would like to reiterate how great I think it is that those three guys are sitting behind there, because that's what it's really about. One of the things I love about the fire service is no one's going to remember our names. We do what we can while we're here and try to take pride in what we do. We're just temporary guardians and pass it down to the young guys. And
Sam, they are going to remember you because we're going to put that hat on that I sent you in the mail.
You want to see it?
Yes, we do. We want to see that. And you know, that is a compliment because you are a brainiac when it comes to the fire service. So excellent.
All right, there you go. I know you've been waiting for this.
Excellent. Here, give it a spin. We should have had a fan on. Excellent. Sam, that's a compliment because you are for a young guy, you know a heck of a lot more than I did at my stage in your career, and you are a huge asset to this group. Captain Mike, anything?
I just want to tell Daryl's Probies, enjoy it. It's the greatest job in the world. Love every minute of it. And if I had it to do all over again, the one thing I would do differently is I would start a journal. I would keep notes of what I did, the jobs I went to, and the people I met and everything else. So in later years, I could go back and reread it. That's the one thing I wish I did.
I would also put in that journal everything Daryl does. That way you can get away with things later.
Fellas, I want to thank our sponsor, Key Hose. That's keyfire.com. If you're thinking about changing your hose, acquiring new hose, give them a shout, keyfire.com. You cannot go wrong. You cannot buy better hose. I use it and I stand by it. And I thank you so much, Key, for sponsoring these hangouts. Hey, we've got a lot to learn. We can't fight every fire. We're going to have to prevent them. And it's not just the job of the Fire Prevention Bureau. As a firefighter, part of your job is recognizing hazards, be it in a high-rise building with exterior cladding or a crowded nightclub. It doesn't matter whether you're in the bureau or not. You have a duty to act. So until next month, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you, and may He keep you safe in our most noble profession.